say repeatedly on NPR. This is your host, Justin Tomasello. Joining me is Christopher Gold.
Hey, everybody.
And my own flesh and blood brother, Nick Tomasello.
Hello, listening public.
Now, here's 18 hours of Zimbabwean Django music.
The Parks and Rec NPR segments are so funny. I laugh every time.
They nail it so good.
I mean, I like NPR's programming. I like their shows, but
I love NPR.
It's so easy to make fun of.
I know.
It's like super pretentious. Like,
if we didn't love
did you
them,
know that Stan Castellana is the?
That's right. Yeah,
it's Homer Simpson.
Yep. And Earthworm Jim.
Yep.
And many other
for all those Earthworm Jim the animated series fans out there, all like 5 of them.
I don't know if they still have it, but they used to have all the episodes just streaming on YouTube, and I watched a whole bunch of them not that long ago, and they were really great.
So this is not an NPR podcast. I wish it was. We'd be rolling in the hay if it was, but unfortunately, we are not.
Actually, every 5th episode we'd be begging for money.
But it would be interesting and educational.
So not this show entirely.
Exactly right.
Why did we bring you on? But no.
Well, we desperately needed to have a fresh face on the pod. It's been too much of just me and Chris, and honestly, Chris, I've been getting hella sick of you.
Well, likewise, Justin. I mean, I can only put up with you for so long.
Yeah.
I want to apologize to your listening public, too, because I'm just getting over, a bad cold. And, my voice is kind of cracky. But, that's actually helpful on radio. But if I start, coughing up mucus into the microphone, that's not as good.
Of all the guests you could have picked, Justin, you chose the sick one.
Oh, there was an episode we did where Zool was on, and he was, sick.
I think I remember that.
And he was sniffing and coughing, every, 2 minutes. I had to edit out so much of it. It took forever.
It was the flu game. He Jordaned it.
Yeah, he really did. That is the exact comparison to me.
It was just as brave a feat.
So Nick is here to join us today because we have a pretty interesting topic. We are going to talk about times when gaming was great. Basically, the idea is significant parts of our lives where we just played a lot of games, or maybe one game in particular, but just played it for a long time. And just what kind of factors kind of gave us that ability to just kind of spend so much time playing games. And I thought of this idea because I was planned to play a lot of games this week to talk about today, and I just got so slammed with work. I had some overtime. I had other jobs I had to do with my second job, and I just really didn't have time to really play a lot, and it kind of bummed me out. And I just thought of how it's funny how there are specific times in life when kind of things are flowing kind of easy, and you can kind of just chill out and play a bunch of games.
Yeah, we're just gonna kind of take it easy this week, sit in our wicket rocking chairs out on the front porch, sipping some whiskey, smoking some pipes, and just kind of reminisce about the old days back when things were better and gaming was good. I mean, again, we're getting older now. Our lives are getting increasingly busier and busier, and we just kind of want to look back and reminisce a little.
Yeah, so we got plenty to get to, but before we get to that, we have been playing some games this week. And Nick, it's been a long time since we've been on, so why don't you lead us off with, what are you playing? What are you playing?
Yeah, so first I need to discuss a game that Chris brought up recently called Into the Breach. So I don't know about you guys. Did either of you play FTL? When it came out.
This is actually very interesting. The episode that you missed last week, I was assigned to play FTL and Indie Arcade. So yeah.
Oh, great. So we'll talk
about it. We'll be getting to that later.
figures. I'm out of the loop for 1 week. I already embarrassed myself on national podcast
On national
radio.
NPR.
On NPR.
I mean, technically, our audience is international, so you've embarrassed yourself in front of the world,
Right,
Nick.
exactly. But so I actually did play FTL when it came out, and I really liked it a lot. It like didn't sink its teeth into me like some people. Some people like live that game. It's like religion for them. So, I mean, I enjoyed it enough that I was like, I need to check out this Into the Breach because, you know, I liked the first game so much. And, you know, I haven't really played it that much, but what I have played of it, I've really, really enjoyed. It's very, like, the word is, like, chess-like, I think is the way I would describe it. Like, Chris, would you agree? Like, it's very, like, strategy-based, like, kind of grid, like, thinking ahead.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Especially because, much like chess, each piece has its own unique moveset. So you have to take that into consideration when you're planning, okay, how am I going to attack the enemy, quote-unquote, pieces? What moves can they move? How can I minimize the damage to my own players? And most importantly, and I really like that comparison to chess, sometimes your pieces have to get sacrificed to achieve the ultimate goal of winning the map.
Yeah, absolutely. I've even seen people, like, I think the developers implemented, like, a naming system for the grid. So, like, left to right is, like, A to F, and, like, the other ones are, like, 1 to 9 or whatever. It's very
funny.
chess-like, so you can do, like, oh, like, I moved my piece to A7 or something like that. Because
Is every
they,
battle
like,
on like a square grid?
it's on, like, a square grid, yeah. But, I mean, there's different, like, you know, environmental hazards and stuff, like, within it. So you can't land on every spot. But, it's really, like, so it's not for everybody. So, like, I found myself, like, when I first played, like, it took me a couple turns to figure out what the goal of the game is. Like, what I found is, like, the goal of the game is not to kill the enemies, it's to protect the cities. Like, that's the most important thing. So everything else, even killing enemies or, like, your own guys, like, all that's secondary to protecting the city. So it's awesome. Like, I kind of find myself just sitting at the screen, just staring at it, and you're like, all right, if I move this guy here, then I'll be able to shoot this guy. And then that guy will be forced back onto a spot where somebody's going to be spawning the next turn. So that'll prevent the enemy from spawning in the next turn. So it'll be one less enemy. But if I do that, then it'll leave this guy open to attack this city. So I need to move this guy there. It's like 50 steps of thinking you find yourself doing. And like that's definitely not for everybody. Some people just want to be like, listen, I'm just going to play and see what happens, which is cool too. But like, it's really scratches that itch of like, oh man, like I just need to like think this out and I can figure it out. It's like every enemy like situation is a puzzle and you just have to like figure out the puzzle. And it's like, there's something so satisfying about it, but it's also very exhausting to like have to think through every move that exhaustively. But yeah, man, I've only played a little bit of it, but it's super enjoyable. And like, you know, the reward for doing it correctly is your pieces get stronger. So it's got like that whole RPG element too, like the chess does not have. I don't know. It's just a really cool game. It's definitely in the running for me for best game of the year so far, of those that I've played.
Oh yeah, it's so addictive and it's just so fun. Like, it's just so satisfying and the music is just pumping you up. Like it just completely it underlines how dramatic and dire the situation is. I mean, the planet is completely overrun by the Vec alien hordes. You know, like you're not even fighting to win, you're just fighting to survive. And I just love like you can have the different characters, and as you play with each character longer and longer, you kind of get attached to each one. So as you get through various missions and they survive together, you're like, yeah, you know, all right, you know, we're a great team. And then the final missions are just brutally hard, and some of these people that you've grown attached to either get killed or you're forced to sacrifice them to win the map. And it's like, oh God, like I don't want to have to do this, but but you have to. Like, I mean, like you said, the ultimate goal is to protect the city, because if every time they take a hit, every time the city takes a hit or the power plant takes a hit, you lose a grid point, and you only get a certain number of grid points total throughout the entire game before you lose the game. And that covers multiple maps. So if you have, I don't remember how many total grid points there are. I think it's like 8. So if if you lose 3 grid points on one map and you only have 5 left, then the next map you play, you still only have 5 to continue through the rest of that island.
Yeah, it's exactly like your whole strength in FTL, Justin. Like for like a reference, but yeah, great game.
Is your is the battle active? Like, do you have time to wait and strategize and think about what you want to do?
It's turn-based completely, so you can stop and you can think, and you're like, all right, yeah, what am I gonna do next? Yeah,
yeah.
So and the enemy Vec, it telegraphs what their next move is going to be. So, say a Vec moves next to a city, and it has a little red arrow pointing at that city block. You know, okay, when this thing's turn comes up next, it's going to attack that city block. I have to try to defend that block. Or,
that's interesting.
Or it will like run over, and then there'll be like a giant arrow showing it's going to launch like a water droplet or something at one of your enemy. At one of your mechs, so you have to decide, okay, do I move this guy out of the way? How will that affect the surrounding area, etc.? So that all helps inform the moves that you can make. And I mean, you think having that advantage of knowing, okay, what they're going to do is going to be helpful, but man, there are a lot of times where you only have a certain number of mechs who can only do one move each turn, and you have like 5 different blocks that are being targeted by each one by a different Vec, and you're like, oh god, like what do I do? Like how do I maximize this?
Yeah, I just love that it gives you all the information, you know. So like there's no like unexpected moves. Like you know exactly what's gonna happen next turn. You just need to like do the work to figure out how to solve it. I also like that it gives you like a mulligan option. So like in case you screw up one time, like you can just like go back for free for one move, and like you can redo it. So that's pretty cool too.
Yeah, that's great.
So other games I've been playing, I have to mention Monster Hunter because I haven't been on with you guys in a while. But if we're talking about games of 2018, like Monster Hunter has just been, oh my god, it's just. I had such a love-hate relationship with that game. It's so my Monster Hunter like history. I've played. It wasn't Tri. It was 3U, right? When it was on Wii U, was it?
Yeah, Tri was like it's the same game, but on the Wii
right.
It was called Tri, and on Wii U it was 3U.
Yeah, 3U, right? So I played a lot of 3U. In fact I bought it twice because I had the 3DS version too, and I was like,
I did the same thing.
transferring my character back and forth. Which was awesome. I did play 4 a little bit, and I did enjoy it, but I didn't play it as much as I wanted to. There was the next one, right? That was also 3DS that I completely skipped.
Generations, I think.
Generations, right? And then I came back to this one, and ultimately, like, it's a really great game. I really enjoy playing it. Like that, like whole like playing with your friends, killing a big monster together thing. Like, there's very few games that can provide that same kind of thrill, and I do like the progression loop, like of I need to get stronger weapons so I can get more stronger enemy kills so I can get better armor, and like I just love that kind of like grind. I find it very enjoyable. However, I have so many issues with how that game like puts up barriers for you to play with your friends. Like they build it, remember when they were like releasing it for E3, like all their teaser trailers and whatnot, and they kept saying, oh, it's going to be so easy to play with your friends, it's got drop in and drop out multiplayer, so you don't have to do all this like crazy like going through loops and stuff to play with your friends. And I was like, oh, finally, because it really was kind of a headache in the other Monster Hunters. But they had this like, you can't play with your friends unless they have already made it to the same point as you, basically. So, like, they have to go through the cutscenes for every monster before you can fight with them. So, like, all the time you're waiting, you're just sitting around waiting for your friend to do something, And it was just, like, such a poor design choice, in my opinion, because, like, it just makes it that much more difficult to just jump in and play, because now you have to wait for your friend to do the cutscene. And then while you're waiting, you're like, well, what am I going to do? I guess I can join another fight. But then that other fight takes like 40 minutes, or 30 minutes. So like, by the time your friend does it, and it's like, well, I can't leave what I'm doing now. And like the entire game is like that, like, and it just like, I just, you can't like really enjoy the multiplayer, I think, until you're all max level, and like super like advanced in the game. And I just find that really irritating, like I wish like, I don't know. I just wish the multiplayer aspect was better designed and implemented, and it's really frustrating because it's a great game, like it's got the bones of a great game, but it just, oh man, like, were you having the same like thoughts about it or?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I was trying to pinpoint what was really turning me off to this game because like every time I play, like I just don't want to play anymore. The game just feels like a chore to me, and I like Monster Hunter. I like the previous Monster Hunters, but something about this one, I couldn't really put my finger on it. And I'm thinking, and like I came to that same conclusion you did, that the whole multiplayer just being way more convoluted than it has to be is definitely a pain in the butt. And those cutscenes, what do they last? Not even a full minute. Like, why can't you just watch that again? Because it's exactly like you said. Like, we're trying to play, and like, okay, well, you guys have to do my quest because I'm way behind you guys. Which is another thing. I don't play as much as like you guys or Zool or Lewis or something. So you guys are going to be way ahead of me immediately. So already there's like some sort of barrier there that's being created. And then, all right, so I have to go through. Like, I got to find this monster, which sometimes annoyingly takes a really long time to find. And I have to watch the cutscene before you guys can even join the battle. So your options are, let's see, I can wait for Justin to get this done, or I can go fight another quest and then like kind of come back. And if you choose to fight another quest, which of course why wouldn't you? Because standing around waiting isn't fun. You're going to be in the middle of that quest when I'm ready for you guys to come join me, and you're not going to want to leave that quest. And it's just this constant like, like back and forth of just trying to line up like exactly both of us to get in, and it's just a huge annoyance.
I think a good comparison is Destiny 2. Like, if you remember Destiny 2, like, you couldn't really get to endgame until you progressed through the main story mission and finished it, but, like, you could always go back and play with your buddies to, like, help them get through the main mission. Like, I did the end mission, like, 4 different times because I was helping everybody else kind of go through it. And I didn't mind it because, like, I was getting, loot, and I was getting some money, I was getting gear, whatever. And also, I was able to experience that with my friends. But to say, like, nah, you can't do that until the cutscenes are over. Like, it's just the dumbest design choice. Like, I cannot get behind it. And I feel like I'm, like, kind of, shitting on the game a little bit. But it's a great game. Like, that's the problem. Like, it's, like, such a fun game.
That's what makes it so frustrating,
I know, right?
Like,
Exactly.
The game is awesome, but why are there all these restrictions here? I felt the same way about Splatoon 2 and all these stupid barriers that they put on that, right? You can't play Salmon Run whenever you want. There's only 2 stages you can get to pick from every hour. You can't change your weapons on the fly. Although now I think you can. They added that in. But, like, all these stupid restrictions that just don't need to be there.
Right. And, especially as we'll talk about later in the episode, like, our gaming time is very sacred and limited. And, that's another thing, too, is PlayStation updates. But I digress. So, yeah, that's, but ultimately, great game. I still think it's on the list for my, games of the year so far. But, yeah, that is definitely one frustrating aspect of it. Surprising nobody, I am playing Lord of the Rings Online.
The Nick game.
I'll give you an update into the world of Middle-earth.
Please.
That's going to be my segment. Right? It's the Spring Festival in Middle-earth right now.
That's nice.
Yeah, it's pretty great. So the Spring Festival was actually like the first festival I ever did in this game. And so like I have a special place in my heart. It's just like this big maze, this big hedge maze. And like you just run through the maze like very meditatively, and you kind of do some quests, and like you collect these tokens, and they're repeatable quests, so you can keep grinding for these tokens. And this year they have a hedgehog cosmetic pet, which is adorable.
Is it blue?
And it is not blue. It is regular hedgehog colored.
That's boring.
And there are like some different cloaks, and there's a really cool looking horse with like all these flowers on it. I can hear Butch screaming like right now from the corner. But anyway, dude, like a fashion Lotro is best Lotro, as I like to say.
That's a big part of that game, man.
No, man, it's
any
awesome.
MMO,
The cosmetics.
I think are most important in a massively multiplayer game.
Yeah.
I mean, especially like that's how you differentiate yourself. That's how like you make the experience unique and yours is the ability to have like all those different customizable options there. Like that's what makes it fun.
And that game's coming up on 11 years right now, and they just like 2 or 3 weeks ago released a new update after Mordor. So they actually did like Erebor, so that's like the Lonely Mountain, and they did Dale Lands, and they did Lake Town. So from like The Hobbit, they were exploring that area of Middle Earth, and it was like this huge update. Unfortunately, it's like end level, so I can't really go to experience it right now because my character's only like 65, I think. It's just cool. I love the developers of that game. Like they're just like really like dedicated to it. They keep putting all this stuff out. Like it's really exciting. It's a great place to play and just relax and
About how many other users are playing the game? Like how many people do you encounter when you're running around? Is it like a good number? Is it crowded, or is it like every now and then you run into somebody?
So when I first started playing, it was still pretty crowded. Like there was always like, some competition over certain resources and stuff, which is always terrible in MMOs in my opinion. But now like, I mean, I still think it's a very healthy server. Like every night I'm on, there's like always like, different people on. There's multiple servers. They did do a consolidation not too long ago. So they like cut the number of servers in half or something, but it's just still very healthy. Like there's always people streaming. There's always people watching the game, talking about it. The forums are active. Like world chat's always active. I always see people in every area that I'm in. I see people, and so it's pretty impressive that like for most MMOs that have gone by the wayside, like this game is still profitable and doing well. I think because the strength of the IP, like Lord of the Rings is something that's, I think Lord of the Rings fans are something bigger than video game fans, like World of Warcraft people, like, I don't think people are drawn to World of Warcraft because of the lore, like they like it because of other reasons. But Lord of the Rings has that aspect, but also like, the whole world of Tolkien, which is, and I know there's one guy that streams on Twitch and he's like a Tolkien professor, and he'll actually go through the book and like go to parts in the game and like discuss like, the actual like written lore of the game, like the written lore and how it like relates to the different environments in the game. It's awesome. I mean, there's so many different like aspects to that game that are great. And I'm gonna continue talking about it every time I'm on the show. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, and they're so faithful to the text. I mean, that's so cool. Absolutely.
And I'm still waiting for a press save repeatedly Hobbit squad. So start updating.
Yeah, I haven't spent. I've played a lot of MMOs, but each of them hasn't been for a very long time. All of the ones I've played, I think Lord of the Rings and the Elder Scrolls one, I think, were the two I had the most fun with. Mm-hmm. For whatever reason, that they just don't really stick with me as much as I want them to. But I would really love to hop it back in there every now and then because I did have a blast playing it.
Yeah, just understand. I mean, you're not going to be endgame rating, at level 115. Like, you're just kind of exploring the world and doing quests with friends, which I think is like all that matters. So,
I'm not as sold on the game's adherence to the source material. Like, for example, in this game, I'm pretty sure they have Shelob as a spider, where I'm pretty sure she's actually a very sexy woman.
Right. As the other Shadows of War games have clearly pointed out to us. I will never let that go.
As you shouldn't.
Right. And then, not to drag on too long, but I went in, and then just lately, last week or so, I got back into Zelda Breath of the Wild, which, I mean, that game is just...
nice.
It's just poetic how good that game is.
Did you get the DLC?
I did get the DLC, but I haven't even played it yet because, well, I guess technically I have because I started a new game on Master Mode, which is a DLC. I mean, that's DLC Pack 1, right, is Master Mode?
Right. Yeah. Plus, I mean, there are just some items that are automatically updated when you get the DLC, like the Hero's Path is now automatically a feature because you have the DLC.
Mm-hmm. So, did either of you guys start a game in Master Mode at all?
I have not, no.
I didn't buy the DLC yet. I'm still not sure I'm going to.
Mm-hmm. So Master Mode it seems cool from the outset because it's like the world is way more dangerous and like you have to change your approach to like every enemy encampment. So basically what it does is it takes like every level of enemy and increases it by 1. So like if you see a red bokoblin in the normal game, it's a blue bokoblin in this game. And even white bokoblins are upgraded into something called gold bokoblins, which are like ridiculously hard to fight. Also, they all hit harder. So like, like it's usually I think 4 times as hard as they hit in the other game, in the regular game. So everything else in the game though is basically the same, except there are certain like loot caches that are like kind of floating on these little platforms you can get that have like super strong weapons in them that kind of balances out a little bit. But if it does anything, it just makes the combat unenjoyable for me. And like I'm like really far into it now. Like I'm like about 40 or 50 shrines in possibly.
That's good progress.
Yeah, and like I'm too far in now, but like if I did it again, I wouldn't do master mode again because it just makes combat like so painful. Like you have to break like so many weapons just to kill like basic enemies that like really don't drop anything that great. So like you don't really choose to fight a lot. A lot of times you'll just be like, nope, I'm out of here. And like maybe you'll sweep in and like steal the weapons and then like head out, which is fun too, but it just does not make combat that enjoyable. And like forget it. If you see like a Lionel or something, like forget it. Like so I probably wouldn't recommend that mode to everybody unless you're into like the more stealth type gameplay, because that's kind of how it turns it into a little bit. Is more like how do I sneak around these guys? Like how do I but it is fun and it is a challenge, so I do enjoy it. Just gives me an excuse to go back into that game, which I think is just phenomenal.
That's always been my style of play. Is like whenever I see enemies, I try to sneak up on them and try to figure out unique ways to take them out without them even noticing I'm there or seeing them. So that to me sounds pretty appealing. That idea that like they hit a lot harder. I'm with you though in terms of a lot of the DLC, like the master mode, and for what I'm about to the Trial of the Sword, a lot of the DLC is just designed to make things more challenging and more punishing, which I guess if you're into a more punishing gameplay, that's fine if you want to do that, but I'm with you in that some of it just is not fun. Like the Trial of the Sword is just so frustrating because even in like the first couple levels, like you go into an area, you have to defeat all the enemies and then you can warp to the next area and you have to repeat it all over again. But if you die and you only get like a certain number of you only have your hearts, and health items are very limited because you go in with literally nothing and you have to build up your own arsenal bit by bit from the enemies that you defeat and just kind of build yourself up, which is interesting and cool in its own way. But if you die at all in those early levels, then you have to go to the very beginning and start it all over again. And maybe like the first couple times that happens, you're like, I'm just like, oh, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. This is too stressful.
Yeah, definitely. I would just like it if they had remember how it was like Galaxy and Galaxy 2, and Galaxy 2 was just basically Galaxy with like some tweaks and stuff in it. If they had a Breath of the Wild 2 that was the same game just with like different tweaks, like maybe more dungeons and like maybe like more towns and stuff, like I would totally buy it. Like I'm not looking for more innovation at this point. I just want more. It's like
more of that. Yeah.
It's like, and that's all I want. So.
Well, they've already indicated that future Zelda games are going to be more in this style.
Yeah, but it's Nintendo, so like whatever that means.
Yeah,
touche.
Yeah, we'll see.
All right,
but that's all I'm playing. So,
all right, Justin, what are you playing?
Yeah, so like I said earlier, this is kind of the week of things falling through. I had big plans and they crumbled mightily. The first plan was to get Far Cry 5 and start playing that. And I didn't even have a chance to download it yet, so scratch that one off. The second plan that fell through happened last night, where Chris and I had made plans to, one night this week, meet up and play A Way Out together, the new cooperative game, where you are these two prisoners that are breaking out of prison. And we had it all planned out. Chris downloaded the game, and he said, just come on over and bring your controller. So I grabbed my controller and I came over. The problem was Chris bought the game for PlayStation 4, and I brought my PC controller because I thought the game only came out on PC, and therefore we could not play it. So instead, we watched about 3 hours of Mickey Mouse cartoons.
And they were the new style Mickey Mouse cartoons, which are just so hilarious. Like they're so well done.
Time well spent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plus, we watched some of the Sixers destroy the Atlanta Hawks, so that was fun.
Also true. Yeah, so it was a bummer. It was, I should have clarified. I actually did not know the game came out on PS4. I thought it was only PC because the team that made that game also made Brothers, and that game was only available on PC. So I assumed, but you know what happens when you assume.
You look like a dork.
Essentially. However, I did play one game this week, and that was the game I was assigned to beat last week from Chris, and that was Mega Man 2. At last week's point, I had beaten the Robot Masters, and I was beginning the very lengthy road to Dr. Wily, and this week I had to work through that, and I gotta say, I did not beat the game, but I got so close because I'm at Dr. Wily right now, and I fought him a bunch of times, but he's just so hard, and I keep dying.
I am shocked that you were such a big Mega Man 2 fan. I never knew this about you.
Yeah, it was really weird. I, growing up, never really played a lot of Mega Man. I know, Nick, we had Mega Man 3 for the NES. That was the first time I ever played a Mega Man game.
Mm-hmm.
That was probably one of the first games I ever even played, now that I think about it. But, yeah, I played Mega Man X, of course. Super Nintendo is a great game. And I don't remember what made me originally get Mega Man 2 when I was in college one day. I think it was in college. But anyway, I was playing on an emulator, and I was just, enthralled with just how much fun I was having. I couldn't believe how, natural this game felt to me in that time of, whatever it was, 2008 or whatever, when I was playing it. And the game came out in, 1987. And it was just, a timeless, classic. And then, over the years of just researching about games and stuff, I've realized that not only is Mega Man 2 noted as probably the best Mega Man game, it's also noted as one of the best games of all time. And I really wanted to just play through it again. And then I decided to buy it on the Wii U Virtual Console.
Mm-hmm.
And again, hopped right in. Controls felt amazing. The soundtrack is so kick-ass of that game.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I was just straight up having fun, a lot of fun playing that game. It's a really tough challenge, but it's not something that's unfair because, you die and then you start to learn patterns and then you start to be able to blow through areas. How the Dr. Wily part works is that there's about, I think it's 5 different stages that you have to beat and, to get to, the final part where you have to fight all the Robot Masters again and then fight Dr. Wily. And each part of those stages, I was dying a bunch on each part, but as I was playing them, I started, knowing what I had to do, and then, the earlier parts where I was dying a lot, I was blowing through them, and then, I would get to the boss, and, okay, I died, but next time I know what to do, and then I got to the boss again and beat him, and, that pattern would repeat up until I got to where I got to. There's one part in particular where there is a boss fight where it is, these 5, orb thingies that are on the wall, and they shoot these they collectively shoot these beams at you at the same time, and it does a lot of damage. And each of these orb things are blocked by a metal wall that can be broken with Crash Man's power, which is basically a cluster bomb.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to make it to that boss fight with full cluster bomb power because you need literally every amount that you get of it, and you cannot miss once. You have to break all the walls and then hit and kill all the enemies with the cluster bomb, and that's the only way to beat it. And there was one point where I broke all the walls, and I killed 4 of the 5 enemies, and I ran out of power for my cluster bomb, and I tried every single other power that I had, and it all bounced off this guy. You need the cluster bomb to kill him. So I died and had to restart the whole level again. But
that's a bummer.
There are some good things about. They must have realized how bullshit that is, because if you let's say I had 3 lives, I just got a game over. I was starting again, and I made it to that boss fight, and let's say I broke 3 walls and killed 2 dudes, but then I died. When I come back again on my second life, those walls that I broke are still broken. So I don't have to break those again the next time I fight them in that round. If I got a game over, it would reset back to everything being broken. But if you're starting off a new live, you could do it again. And eventually, I was able to beat it.
Well, that's good at least.
Yeah. Another great thing is because I'm playing on the virtual console, the game kind of just. It's almost like a game is just kind of put in a save state, if you will. It's just like a suspended state, so I can just kind of pick it up and start playing again. And how the 5 levels of Dr. Wily work is if you would turn the game off and you put in the passcode or whatever to get to that part, you start at the first of the 5 levels. But if you die and get a game over, you get to start at the level that you were on that you died on. And there's infinite continues. So, if I was on stage 4 and I got a game over, I would still start at stage 4 again. Mm-hmm. So, that was super helpful to not have to go through the entire thing again.
Yeah.
And, so I made it to the Robot Masters again, where you have to fight them all. And all you get when you beat one is maybe a little bit of health. And then after you beat all, 8 of them, then you go into a room and fight Dr. Wily, who comes out in, this giant, metal plane tank contraption thing, and he's got 2 forms where one you gotta knock off the shield, the front shield of the ship, and then once that falls off, his life refills and you just see him in the ship. And I've got to where I've knocked off the shield and then got to him and knocked a little bit of his life down, but I can't get past that. His attacks do so much damage and they're really hard to dodge, and it's just every time you die to him, you have to beat all the Robot Masters again. And it's getting super annoying.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's where I left off. Got really close, but unfortunately came up a little bit short.
Hey, you made a lot of progress. You're almost there. I know you're gonna have a breakthrough at some point. So yeah, just keep at it, and yeah, eventually you'll be able to have that notch on your belt.
It's not even so much that it's. It's definitely hard. Don't get me wrong. It's just such a bummer when you die and then you have to fight all 8 Robot Masters again. It's just an annoying, it feels like a waste of time almost. I know I could use the save state and just kind of reload that every time, but that just feels a little bit too cheap.
You want the genuine experience there.
Yeah. So that is me, Chris. That brings us to you.
All right. So if you'll remember, Nick doesn't. Last week I was assigned Thimbleweed Park to try to complete.
Oh, nice. You love those games.
I do love those games. I barely made any progress at all as I was playing the game. It was one of those situations where I loaded up the game and I was Inspector Diaz. There are the 2 inspectors in the game, Diaz and I forget the other one's name. This lady, but they're modeled off of Mulder and Scully from X-Files, and
and they look exactly like them.
And I was Inspector Diaz, and I was at the cemetery, and I looked at the screen, and I immediately realized, oh my god, I completely forget where I am or what to do. So I know I'm past, as I talked about last time, I'm past the one flashback scene where I'm not going to spoil it, but I was past the second flashback scene. And so now I was back in the present day, and I have to gather up more clues and just try to figure out the mystery of what exactly is going on in Thimbleweed Park. So I'm still just trying to feel things out and figure out what's going on. Needless to say, I did not beat the game, but I'm trying. I'm trying to make some progress, and I'll report back in the coming week or so about my progress. But unfortunately, this week I also did not pass the challenge. But Justin, you got a lot farther than I did.
Hey, don't be afraid to use a walkthrough or anything just to catch yourself up.
Yeah,
because obviously it's I mean, what are your options? Like, try to waste time and figure out what you're supposed to do, or start the game all over again, you know?
Well, I'm not doing that.
Right. I'm a big proponent of that. Like, I think when you get stuck and it's causing you pain or it's causing you frustration, like, that's the point where you're just like, well, this isn't worth it. I'm going to look it up. Like, it's fine. Like, I think, like, unless it's a game that, like, you're meant to do that, you know, like when you're meant to kind of put your head up against the wall a while, like, even in that case, I don't know. Like, if I'm being frustrated by it, like, my time's valuable, you know? Like, I want to play it and I want to move on. So look it up. It's not a problem. Nobody's going to look down on you except for this hardcore gamer guys, but, you know, nobody listens to them anyway.
Yeah, there was a few instances in Mega Man where, like, I couldn't remember what the right, you know, power is to use that's effective against one of the robots, and you know, Zool or Bush was like, "Oh, you want me to look it up for you?" And like, and at first I was like, "No, no, no," and then I was like, you know, like, if I was playing this in 1987 or whatever, I probably had Nintendo Power with me that gave me all that information anyway, or something like that, you know. And I was like, and plus, like you said, you know, time's valuable. Like, I've tried it a bunch of times, I'm not getting anywhere. Like, and also how the game is set up, where like if you die, you get penalized by going to have to go back and doing a lot of stuff all over again. Like, you know. So some of those times, like, yeah, I think that's fine.
No, that's fair. I mean, I'll do a little bit more digging in the game and see what turns up, if anything. But because plus two, I have a notebook. I just remembered I have a notebook that will detail, okay, what has been discovered so far, what my next objective is. So I can just refer to that and figure out where to go from there. So,
cool.
Yeah, so I'll get to it. I beat Shantae and the Pirate's Curse twice this past week.
Twice?
Twice. Because the first time I beat it, I got to the end, and I beat the boss, and he did this thing where after I beat him, he was like, you may have beaten me, but you didn't actually beat me. And he ran off. And everyone was just like, well, I guess that's that. And then, like, Risky Boots, again, she had, like, teamed up with you to take down this common enemy. She's like, don't worry, I'll handle him. You just don't worry about it for now. And then she ran off, and everyone was just kind of like, well, I guess that's the end. And credits rolled. And I was like, all right, this is a bad ending. This is clearly a bad ending. I need a better ending than this. So the reason for the bad ending, part of the issue is you have to retrieve magic that has been scattered throughout the entire world. And it's possessed Risky Boots' her minions, which I think in previous games were Tinkerbats. And they're like these...
Sure.
Yeah, they're these... like really dark figures. They're dressed like pirates, but they're like really skinny and shadowy. And in this game, they've been possessed by the magic, and now they've turned into like actual bats, but a lot more horrifying. Like, they've got giant fangs that jut out from their lower jaws. You can't see their eyes because they're covered by a pirate's bandana, and they're called cackle bats. And to get the good ending of the game, I have to go throughout the entire world, and I have to destroy all of the cackle bats and recover the lost magic.
So did you play the game completely from the beginning again, or did you load like a previous save?
I loaded the previous save. I just loaded the previous save.
Okay.
Yeah, because it did that thing where it saves right before the final boss. So I just loaded up that save file, and then I just went back and took care of whatever remaining cackle bats there were throughout the world. And
how long did that take you?
It didn't take me too long. It took me a couple hours or so. That I used a walkthrough for. Yeah, I did use a walkthrough for that, because some of them were in very, very obscure, hard to reach, never in a million years would I have thought to look here places.
Yeah.
And you have to use a lot of the power-ups and upgrades that you get throughout the game. Like, a lot of the equipment you find is Risky's traditional pirate equipment. So, like, you get Risky's boots, which help you run very fast so you can get over like these platforms that collapse the instant you step on them, so you can run across those. You get her hat, so you can use that. It's like a giant hat that acts as a parachute, and you can use that to float across really wide chasms that you can't jump across. And the most fun is the last power-up you get is Risky's Cannon, which is a cannon that you can fire up to 3 times after you jump into the air, and it fires downward. And the cannonball acts as a weapon that will hit enemies that are below you, but most importantly, the force of it projects you upward. So you can use the cannon as kind of like, not even a double jump, but as like a quadruple jump. Because there's your first jump, and then you could go boom, 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 and get up to really high, out-of-reach areas. And it's fun, too, to like explore a lot of the nooks and crannies, because one of the other main power-ups you can find in the game, they act like heart pieces in the Legend of Zelda series. They call them heart squids. And they're these they're these tiny squids that are red and heart-shaped, and they have these big, cute little googly eyes, and you scoop them up, and every 4 of them you get, you can take them to this smithy in your main town, and she'll take 4 of them and just smash the living hell out of them into like a heart container, and it becomes an extra heart for you, so it expands your life force. Yeah, so I went around and collected all the cackle bats. I got all the heart squids, and then I went back to the final boss, and I whooped him. And turns out, like, when you get the good ending, he gets like 3 extra phases to him that you have to fight, which I was completely unprepared for. But I had enough healing items on me to outlast him, and I finished the job, and I got the good ending.
That's awesome.
Yep. So
I'm
now
really glad you did that.
Yeah. So now, put a bow on Shantae, and that's all done. And I gotta say, like, I mean, despite the concerns that I had last week about like all the fan service and all that, like, it's still such a fun game. Like, I was having a blast. The controls were really tight. The levels were really fun. Enemies were really well designed and varied. Honestly, it makes me want to go back and play the earlier games just to see like what I had missed out on. But it was
Forward, maybe one of the best developers of the past 10 years. I mean, their Shantae games are so highly rated. Of course, Shovel Knight is incredible. They made that the Mummy Demastered game, which apparently is really, really good. I mean, they're just really awesome at like side-scrolling platformer adventure game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm really definitely a big fan of them and their work, and just want to. I'm excited to see what comes next from them.
All right, you play anything else?
I have. Justin, Nick, as I'm sure both of you are aware, this week baseball season kicked off. Baseball, which means that I had to pick up a copy of MLB The Show 2018.
Mm-hmm.
Which means that I got to carry over. One of the main features of the game is when you do Road to the Show, you can carry over previous year's Road to the Show files to this year's version. Mm-hmm. Which means, fellas, I got a Pigman update.
Pigman!
It's been a long time.
It has been far too long since we heard from our piggy pitcher down in the minors.
I remember last time, didn't he pitch like a perfect shutout game, and then he got benched.
That was a while ago.
Right.
I still think of these 53 episodes of Press A repeatedly, I never laughed so hard as that story.
I still to this day can't believe it. It is one of the most unbelievable things I have ever experienced playing a game. Just the pure injustice of it. But no, Pigman, that was back when Pigman was in the AA level of baseball. The adventures with Pigman and his clearly racist manager occurred down in the AA level. Well, now he's in AAA, which means the competition is more fierce and the crowds are a lot more noticeable. Especially the majors keeps a very close eye on the prospects at the AAA level because they know these are the guys who are going to be called up to the majors. Pigman is starting out, and now I'm starting out too. This is my second start with Pigman at AAA. He had one start in MLB The Show 2017, which he did really, really well. I think he threw a complete game shutout, if I remember right. Yeah, it's something like, I think he had a complete game shutout, like 13 strikeouts. An average day for Pigman. Well, now I have a brand new version of the game, which means that the controls are slightly different. And let me back up a little. One of the new features that they introduced in Road to the Show this year is the ability to pick an archetype for your player to emulate. So, say if you're a hitter, then they'll be like, "Oh, do you want to be a speedy player, sort of like a Ben Revere, or do you want to be a contact hitter who hits a lot of singles with not a lot of power, like Tony Gwynn? Do you want to be a powerful hitter who hits monstrous home runs like Barry Bonds, etc.?" Since Pigman is a pitcher, he got the option, do you want to be like a power hitter, a power pitcher, excuse me, someone who throws a lot of really fast fastballs like Noah Syndergaard, who hits 100 miles per hour easily? Or do you want to be a finesse control type pitcher, somebody who throws a lot of, doesn't throw a lot of heat, but throws a lot of pitches that will fool hitters and, kind of dances around the edges of the strike zone. Exactly. So I picked that archetype. I start my next game, and the timing on the pitching meter, because it's a little meter that pops up above the mound. Like, the view is you're the pitcher, you're in the foreground, and you're facing the batter who's in the background, and you're pitching towards him. And then there's a pitching meter above you. And when you start the pitch, and you can choose a pitch with any different buttons. You have fastball, curveball, cutter, whatever pitches you set up when you first create the character, they're assigned to specific buttons. So fastball is the X button. So you hit X, and that starts the meter going. And as it's going from right to left, it leaves a little yellow line, just a quick little yellow line towards the right side. And you just kind of have to wait and watch as it sits there. As it gets towards the left, it starts getting into the power area of the meter. And when it's in this area, you have to choose when to hit the X button again. That will set the power of the pitch. So if it's like in the very beginning of the meter, there won't be so much power behind the pitch. But if it's at the very end, then it's going to be thrown very hard and very fast. So you hit the X button, or whichever pitch button you've chosen, to set the power, and then it very quickly swings all the way back to the right side. And at this point, you have to try to hit X again and time it with that little yellow line that was left when the meter was first going the first time. So as you're pitching, that's 3 times you have to hit the button. First to begin the pitch, then you set the power, and then the last time to kind of set the release of the pitch. So it determines if you hit the button before the yellow line, you're releasing too early. If you hit it after, you're releasing too late. And so if it gets into if you hit it as it's over that yellow line, that determines how much control you actually have over the pitch. So right before you throw the pitch, you use the controls, you use the left stick to move the pitch around and say, okay, here's where I want to throw the pitch. And as long as you hit it in that yellow line, it should go where you actually want to throw the pitch.
So where is Pigman right now? Did he transfer still to the AAA, or do you have to start at the AA again?
He's still in AAA. Yeah, your character transfers over exactly where they were from last time to the new version of the game.
And he's still with the Pittsburgh Pirates?
He's still in the Pittsburgh Pirates organization, and so he's with their AAA affiliate, which I believe it's the Indianapolis Indians.
Oh, that's right. I remember laughing at that a few episodes ago.
Yes, it's not the best name, but it's the minors. Their standards are lower. So, Pigman, he's in AAA, and the game even talked about, like, it's a brand new version of the game, but they still talked about, oh, last time Pigman was out there, he threw a complete game shutout. He had a great game. Everything's going great. And I was like, oh, that's cool that they actually remember that. That's very neat. So I'm playing against, I forget who, but I'm pitching against these scrubs down in AAA, and first couple innings, I'm wheeling and dealing. I'm striking. I think I started off with like 5 straight strikeouts on like maybe 20 total pitches. I'm like, man, this is great. Like, I'm dealing. This is wonderful. And then in the third inning, the wheels on the bus just completely fell off.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Yeah, Pigman just started, like, I was trying to hit these different corners, but the timing of the new meter was throwing me off. So I was missing with a ton of my pitches. And I left one of them up a little bit, and the guy hit it, and he hit it down the third base line. And it was one of those balls that, like, it grounded towards third base, and it hit third base and just came to a complete stop right there. And it threw off my third baseman, who had dived to try to catch the ball, but clearly it wasn't there because it had hit the base and it stopped. So he ran up and picked it up, but by that point, the guy was at first and he was safe. And now at this point, when you don't have anybody on, the meter moves very slowly and very deliberately. So it's easy to set your pitches and to throw a pitch. When you have a runner on, that meter moves extremely fast.
Oh, that's cool. It's like a pressure meter for like the pitcher. It's like harder. It's like you're under more pressure, so it's harder to make your pitches.
Right. I think it's supposed to simulate too how much time he has to throw the pitch. So like when it's going slowly, he's throwing from the windup. That's when the pitcher he picks his leg way up high and he rolls his arm way back, and he's able to throw his pitch with a lot of deliberation. But when you have a runner on base, you have to throw from the stretch.
I never knew what that meant, and now I get it. Oh
yeah,
my
me
god!
Neither.
Yes, because if the pitcher takes his time to lift his leg up and wind up, the batter will have more than enough time to steal bases every single time.
Oh my god! Fucking revelation.
The chakra has been unlocked.
You see, who said this couldn't be an NPR educational, informative podcast?
Yeah, really. We're learning a lot today. So that's how it works. So unfortunately for me, when you pitch from the stretch, that meter goes by very quickly, and I was unprepared for it. So I was throwing these meatballs down the middle of the plate, and people weren't crushing it, but they were dinking them for hits now and then. My useless right fielder, there was a ball he could have gotten, but he did that thing where he stopped right behind it and just let it bounce in front of him, and then he fielded it on that bounce and then threw it in. I was squealing at him what are you doing? Field the ball. Yeah, I'm amazed I only gave up 3 runs that inning. But yeah,
Wow.
I was, oh man, I was sweating up a storm. I was like, oh man, the pitcher isn't looking too good out there. He's just not locating his pitches. I don't know what's going on. And Pigman is like wiping his brow. Like, you ever hear the term like sweating like a pig? That was Pigman. He's like, oh god, maybe they were right. Maybe
He
I
also
don't.
seems to be a giant human pig person.
Maybe I don't belong in AAA. But
Someone
no,
smell bacon.
because that boy's fried. No, but amazingly, I was actually able to help myself out at the plate because the Pittsburgh Pirates, they're a National League team, which means the pitchers hit, including down in the lower levels of the minor leagues. So Pigman, a couple times, he hit a couple of singles and was able to get on base. And then the team around him was able to keep rallies going and drive him in. Pigman settled in, pitched like 3 innings after that, and even scored a run. I think it was the first time Pigman ever scored a run in his life.
Well, there you go.
Yeah,
Progress.
and we won the game 5-3.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, thank God. Thank you, God. And then afterwards, Pigman was actually mobbed at his locker room by reporters. Like, Pigman, everyone's, people in the major leagues are, really talking you up. You're tearing up the International League. Do you think the Pirates should be calling you up? And he's like, well, I mean, I don't want to be the one to have to tell them what to do, but yeah, I mean, if it were up to me, I think I'm pretty ready. It's like, so you think they should call you up? Again, I'm not saying what they should or should not do, but I think I'd be ready for that phone call if they want to make it.
Wow, he really is walking on eggshells.
He's gonna get called into the office.
Yeah, really. But yeah,
Wait, so when he pitches like perfect games, he gets benched. But when he like almost blows the lead, or that's when they want to bring him up.
Hey, listen, that's the difference between AA and AAA. Standards are different. But yeah, so Pigman is continuing on his piggy journey. He's going to be with the Pittsburgh Pirates sooner rather than later. I'm sure of it. And now that I've got MLB The Show, I should be able to provide more regular Pigman updates for the next couple months or so.
And that is pig-tastic.
All right, so that's it. That's it for me. But it's not it for you, Justin. You have an indie arcade.
Indie arcade.
As you may remember from last week, I assigned Justin the instant classic indie game FTL, Faster Than Light, as his indie arcade game. Justin, take it away.
Yeah, and we've talked about this a little bit earlier. And Nick, feel free, obviously, to tack on this conversation, because I'm pretty confident you played this more than I did. Full disclosure, I only played this game for about 23 minutes, and I gotta say, I did not like this game. And I would also like to say that doesn't mean this is a bad game. I was really into the new presentation of this game. I was pretty impressed with how, it's weird to say realistic in like a sci-fi game, but they put in elements to this game that you wouldn't really think of in like when you hear of like a sci-fi game that you're playing, right? Like managing the ship's rooms and like repairing like the oxygen tanks or whatever. Like, it doesn't sound like something that would be that enthralling for a game of your experience, but I mean, it's all in there. And there is a lot going on in this game. They strongly recommend you play the tutorial in the beginning of the game, so of course I did that. I even watched a couple of videos just to kind of prep myself. And basically, the HUD's very busy, right? There's a lot going on the screen. You have like your ship's health and your shields, and then in the bottom left you have like different things you have to keep fueled with the energy from your reactor. That's like your weapon, your oxygen tank, all that kind of stuff. There are sub things that also need to be fueled. and just a lot. There's a lot going on, and the tutorial. I gotta say, did a very excellent job of explaining everything in a fairly quick manner. A lot of people don't even want to bother with tutorials because they're afraid they're going to take too long and they're going to be very wordy. But they kind of went through everything pretty well. Not a lot of text to read on the screen, and they kind of get you ready for the game and how everything works, and basically let you know what you're getting yourself into. And if you've never played the game before, it is an isometric view of the top of your spaceship, which I think is defaultly named the Kestrel. And you have a small crew to begin with, I think 3 people, and you can move them around any way you please into any different quadrant of the ship you want them to be in. Rooms are sectioned off. There is like the pilot's chambers in the beginning, and then there is like the oxygen tank, and where your weapons are, and your other reserves, and they each have an icon on them. And when that icon turns red, that means that that thing is broken. So what that room does for your ship will no longer happen until it's fixed. Like, for example, if the oxygen room breaks, your ship loses oxygen. So you have to get that fixed or else you're going to go down. And basically you can run into space pirates and get into battles. And if your ship loses all of its health, obviously it explodes and you die and you just start all over. So
that's never ideal.
Yeah. My very first trip after finishing this tutorial was, you start off on the first screen where you're just kind of like setting up, or I really don't think there's anything you can do at that point. You can maybe position your guys or something. And then you click a button that says jump, and it brings you to a map screen, and you can pick a different quadrant to go to investigate. And every quadrant you go to has some sort of interaction. The first one I went to was a fight with a space pirate ship. And I was like, okay, here we go. We're getting right into the thick of it. And they appear on the right side of the screen, and they'll start attacking you. And you can start attacking them too, but you have to make sure that your weapons are fully charged and ready to deploy to start attacking them. And of course, they have a shield around their ship that you have to bring down. Certain weapons do more damage. Like, there's a lot of strategy that goes into the game. And I was trying to attack these guys, but every time I tried to attack, like right when I was pressing the button to get ready to attack, they would attack me and hit my weapon room and disable my gun. Mm-hmm. So then, okay, I can't attack them right now, so I have to send some guys to run over and start repairing the gun. And, they're taking a long time. I'm trying to get it to rebuild. And when all this is happening, I'm getting attacked in other parts of the ship. Things were on fire. People were screaming. And instantly, my ship exploded, and I was dead. And back to the menu screen, all within the span of 5 minutes of my first run. And I was ready to just be like, "Fuck this game!" Stop playing. I was furious. And then I was like, "All right, let me take a breath and just try it one more time because that is it's not fair." So, my second run through, I actually made it to some different parts. I think we found a ship that was requesting help, and it gave you the option to, assist the ship, or it could be a trap, so watch out. And I went for it, and luckily it paid off. I think I got some shield points or something from it. I actually fought a few battles that we won. I was able to kind of manage things a little bit better, and just kind of move out through the galaxy and kind of, do your own thing. And, I think the presentation of the game is great. The soundtrack that they made for that game is really, really awesome.
I actually bought that soundtrack because I like it so
you can
much.
buy it on Steam too, yeah. It's very atmospheric and almost, it's got a good beat to it. It's almost a little bit dancey. I don't know. I was really into the soundtrack.
Love the opening theme for the game, the main menu theme. But anyway.
Yeah. Oh no, it's great. The presentation of the game is great. The graphics aren't bad. They're like a pixel-based kind of, like your characters are all really small, so there's not really any detail in them. But that's kind of really not the point of the game. The point of the game is you're just managing the entire crew at the same time. So there's really no point to really identify characters. Plus, they're going to die very quickly, so don't get attached to anybody.
It is cool. As the game goes on, you get to unlock different races. So you can get like an alien buddy. You can get like a like robot buddy. It's like very like Star Trek-y, like all the different, and they all have different like abilities too. Like some are better at repairing, some are better at like, some are better pilots. Like I think they all have like different like subclasses. Did you like were you using the space bar at all to like pause the game and enter commands?
No, I completely forgot that was an option, actually.
Yeah, so that was like a big thing for me once you realize that. It's like you can stop the game at any time by pressing the pause button, the space bar button. And you can also enter commands in that screen. So if you ever played Dragon Age, like it's the same idea. Like you can pause it, and then you can put all the like enter the different commands in for all your different guys. Then you could unpause it. So it's a lot easier to manage like all the different like things you need to be doing at once by pressing the space button, space bar.
Interesting. Yeah, it's I was gonna say it's kind of tough to manage everything, especially when you're in a fight, and I feel like they are the space pirates are ruthless, man. It's an active battle system, so they're gonna attack you no matter what you're trying to do, and they they know what they're doing, right? I'm like, oh, what does this thing do again? And then like all of a sudden there's a fire behind me, like so. Obviously, this would be something that if I spend a lot more time on, perhaps I would like it a little bit more. This instead of me playing it, I felt like it was just a little too much going on. Like even though I went through the tutorial and everything, I like kind of instantly forgot what a lot of the items on the HUD did, and like you would hover over it and it would just kind of say what it was and not really what it did, and I got a little confused on that kind of stuff too. And like it's very challenging. The game's very upfront about that. And I think, for the right strategist, person who's a very big fan of strategy games and planning and stuff, and space travel, like the whole sci-fi experience, I think this is a really awesome game for them to play. But, I don't know. I wasn't 100% into it.
Captain, we're taking heavy fire. What are your orders? What do these buttons do again?
Anybody see the manual?
So one thing about FTL also, it also applies to Into the Breach, I feel, is like for me there's a huge learning curve, but there's this point where actually it's not that huge. It's a lot quicker than you realize that you start to understand how the game works. And once you make it to that point, then all of a sudden it becomes a lot easier and more challenging because like now you're not worried so much about how the game plays. It's more about the strategy of the game. And so like once you understand how everything works, that's what I think Into the Breach does beautifully. It's like, all right, here's everything. Here's what the next enemy's going to do. Here's what, your options are. And in fact, even here's a button to make you redo the move if you screw up. Like everything's here, but now it's still challenging because this is what we're trying to get you to do. And FTL kind of has a little bit of that too. There is a lot of RNG in that though, and it can be pretty brutal in that game. Like, when you jump and like you go to a shop and it doesn't have what you're looking for like hole repair or something like that. Like, and it's pretty brutal. But, I would argue stick with it just a little bit, and I think you might start to get some more out of it because like initially that challenge is very off-putting, but it does grow on you.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea. There was a really funny part where there was a fire in my one room, so I sent like one guy to go in there and put it out, and I'm like, why is he taking so long? And I just sent the other two guys to go in there and put it out, and then I realized that they weren't putting it out, they were just standing on top of the flames, and they all died. And I was like, well, that's great.
Did you use the seal the door button too, so like the doors can come down and like
right? That's awesome. I have done that, but I maybe I made this up, or I don't know. I thought you could have a guy come in and just kind of like blast out the fire with a fire extinguisher. Or is that not possible? Is the only way to put out fire is to open the doors?
To be honest, it's been a while. I thought there was a fire extinguisher, but maybe I'm crazy.
But we had picked up an alien dude who just joined the team. Like literally just joined the team, and then like the three guys went into the room and then died. And then he was like the only person left on this ship that he probably had no idea how to fly it or anything.
I'm still trying to find the bathrooms.
Yeah, so that was pretty great.
All right. Well, I mean, you gave it a good shot. I mean, it still sounds like you. I mean, it still sounds like you had some fun with the game, even though you died a lot. But that's like Nick was saying. It clearly the game has a steep learning curve. I can tell you right now, Into the Breach is itself very, very challenging. So that isn't very surprising to me that FTL would be in the same vein as Into the Breach. But yeah, maybe like Nick said, if you stick with it, you might enjoy it a little more.
Yeah, definitely. And I love a new presentation of a game. Even if I don't really enjoy the game, seeing something that's like just so creative and like just a different way to play a game, I think is really awesome. So, All right, Chris, it's time for me to slap you in the face with the game. And
That is true.
This game is on the Nintendo Switch. It is currently $7.99, and I hope you're ready for some stealth, because I am assigning you Spy Chameleon.
Spy Chameleon?
Spy Chameleon is an arcade puzzle game where the player must avoid being seen thanks to the chameleon's ability to change colors and camouflage. Through 5 missions and 75 levels, the player will discover different enemies and abilities to complete these super secret missions. Taking photos of a celebrity with her lover and stealing the secret formula of a successful soft drink are just 2 examples.
Wow. I never thought I'd have the opportunity to actually be a chameleon at one point.
I
You've
love
never played Chameleon Twist 64?
Right, or Gex.
Yeah, or
Is that
Gex. Well, I guess he's not really a chameleon.
Yeah, whatever.
He's a gecko. But yeah.
I love the design of Spy Chameleon here. I just looked him up. It is hilarious.
Yeah, he's great. I came across this game on Steam like a long time ago, and I was like, this looks really cool. Like, I want to pick this up, and I just never got around to it, and I forgot about it. And I was browsing through the eShop on Nintendo, and I saw Spy Chameleon is now on Switch. So, Chris, I am assigning you Spy Chameleon for this week.
All right, awesome. Yeah, I get to be a nice green chameleon sneaking around.
In a turtleneck, apparently.
In a turtleneck with the goofiest looking mask ever. No one will ever know I'm a chameleon. No, yeah, looks like a lot of fun. I can't wait to pick it up.
Yeah, it looks great. And with that, what do you guys say we take a quick break? And when we come back, we will hop right into our discussion of when gaming was good.
Hell yeah.
Back. This is Press A Repeatedly. I am Justin Tomasello here with Chris Gold and Nick Tomasello, and we are about to hop into a discussion of times in our life when the gaming was good. I have written down our show notes here of when gaming was flowing like a fine wine at an Italian dinner party.
Yes, because if you've ever been to a good Italian dinner party, you know that there is more wine than any human being could ever possibly consume at any one particular moment, which is great. I love a good wine with dinner.
Which reminds me, Justin, dinner tonight is at 4 o'clock.
Oh, thank you.
I actually have a dinner at 4 o'clock today.
Nobody cares, Chris.
Sorry.
Oh boy. I'll have a glass of wine and a glass of marinara, please. Yeah, you know what? Mix it together. Make a blush.
I don't think that's what a blush is.
Excuse me, is your last name Tomasello? I don't think so.
It is. All right.
So,
Video
okay.
games.
Yes. So I'm going to start with this idea that I had. Well, what made me think of this idea was I was putting away my 3DS games because I'm still in a very slow and arduous task of unpacking everything. And I'm like going through my games and I'm like, man, I beat a very good amount of these games. And for a lot of my game collections, like the number of games beaten is usually a pretty small number. But for 3DS, like I've probably in like the 80% like I've beaten of my own 3DS games, which is a lot for me. And the reason why that was because I used to take the ferry into work when I was working in New York. I was living in Staten Island. I was taking the ferry. I was taking a bus to the ferry, taking a ferry to a subway, and then walking to my office. So I had about a good hour going to and a good hour coming from, where I'm not driving, I'm not, in control of anything else. I could just sit down and, play a game. I also read a lot of books during this time too, so I was going through my bookshelf thinking the same thing. Like, oh, I read all these books too. Anyway, off topic. I had all this time to actually just devote to whatever I wanted, and of course, most of that was video games. And I take that so for granted now because, like, I don't have that time really anymore. And now I'm taking the train to work, which gives me about 20 minutes of time to do something like that if I wanted to. But it's still really not a lot to like turn on a game and play it, and then have to save and turn it off again. But yeah, I mean, I was just thinking during that time, man, like 3DS has that awesome feature where you can kind of go in and see all the games that you've played and how long you've played them for.
I miss that so bad.
And you can tally them up.
Yeah,
me too, man. This time manager, and it tells you what you've played, and like you can rank them by like the most times you've played it or how long you've played a game. And man, like I was going through some of those a little while ago. I couldn't believe some of the time I put into these games. Like Fantasy Life for 3DS, I have like over 60 hours into that game. I don't even remember like just putting that much time into that game. Like it's great. I think my winner was Animal Crossing for 3DS New Leaf. I think I had over like 130 hours in that game or something like that. Fire Emblem, put a lot of time into that. I beat a lot of RPGs. I beat my first ever Final Fantasy. Well, beat my first Final Fantasy playing on my 3DS. I got the Final Fantasy 4 remake for the DS that I was playing on my 3DS. I beat that. Mario and Luigi games, like played a bunch of Tales of the Abyss, my first Tales game I ever played and beat. So yeah, I mean, it was just such a great time to be able to go through a really stellar library. By the way, 3DS probably has one of the best game libraries out there, and I'm really thankful for that time that I had to really give to that system.
No, that's that's really cool. I'm glad. I think what's really interesting about that too, Justin, is like that wasn't so long ago when you had that moment, because I think what's I mean, if I had to suppose with Nick and myself, our time periods were longer ago, back when we had a lot more free time. But now, again, as our lives have gotten busier and we've had more responsibilities and things we have to take care of, you had all that time to play those games just like within the past year or so, and that is fantastic. And I'm really, really glad that you were able to play all those amazing games on that amazing library and actually beat as many as you could.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, that commute definitely sucked at times, a lot of times. But to have like around 2 hours a day of where I can just play games, like, was awesome. And the portability of 3DS was great. Like I said, the game selection was awesome. And yeah, sometimes I do miss that a lot.
Nick, what do you got?
For times in my life, there's a couple places that kind of stand out in my mind, but like, I remember being in med school, and like I was away from home. I was in West Virginia, and at this point, like in my life, I'm just like, if I like people, like I'm gonna hang out with them and go do stuff. But like a lot of the times, I'm like, I'm not really actively seeking to make friendships now, so I'm just kind of content doing my own thing. And after studying like all day and like being in class all day, you're just like exhausted. So I just remember I would like lay on my bed and just put on Mass Effect games. I think specifically Mass Effect 2 or 3. I think it was 2 at that point. And just kind of relax and play through the whole game. And it was like the most relaxing, rewarding experience playing through those games together. I mean, by myself, just in my room, and just using it to kind of like get away from like all the stress of being away and studying and all that stuff. And like I got so invested in those games, like it was just a really memorable moment for me. Because the other thing too is like, and you guys will, I'm sure you'll experience this at some point, or you have experienced this. It's like you get that when you were a kid, like you felt like gaming was your whole life. Like, oh man, I can't wait to get home and play video games. I can't wait to go to the store and rent a new video game. And your life kind of revolved around that, and other things too. But it was that was like the main thing for me. And like now that I'm older, I have way more responsibilities, and also I have way other things that I'm interested in too. I want to do different things with my time, creativity, like writing and other things. And having that little bit of time for myself that I kind of set aside definitely decreases the amount of games I can play. But when I do play them, I appreciate them that much more. So like my wife will go to bed around 10 o'clock, and I stay up later because of my work schedule. And so like I'll have like an hour or two where I just play Lord of the Rings, like, and just really get into it. And then I can, really cherish that couple hours that I have. Same thing with Zelda too, I just kind of get lost in the world. So, those are the moments to me that like really, mean something, and like, I find my gaming time is less and less as I seem to be getting older, but I just enjoy it more and more now because I know that that's the time that I've set aside for it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes perfect sense because, I mean, your time is valuable. So you have to know that the time that you use for video games, you have to invest that time into something that is going to be equally valuable. So the games that you play have to be games that mean something to you and that kind of give you that rewarding feeling on an emotional level. Something that means a lot to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's really interesting how you mentioned that when you do have free time, that time is being competed for by all your other hobbies and things you want to explore at that time because, like, you just don't have a lot of time. And a lot of it has to do with like coming home from work and like let's say you do have time, but you're just too mentally exhausted to even pop on a game. Like that happens to me a lot, and it's very frustrating. But it's just something that you have to kind of deal with and schedule things better if you really do want to sit down and play.
Mm-hmm.
Especially like for me anymore. I mean, I have a couple jobs, so throughout the week, my time is limited. So I try to hop on my Switch or on the PC whenever I can, here or there, just to squeeze whatever gaming time that I can. But I mean, I have other interests outside of gaming. Like maybe I want to watch TV or want to watch different shows or maybe something on YouTube. As I mentioned, baseball season is starting up, so I might want to watch the Phillies, or I might want to hang out with you guys, or hang out with Elena, or do something else. So time is extremely precious nowadays for all of us.
Chris, how about you? When was a time in your life where you just played a lot of games?
I I'm gonna have to say like probably around like definitely high school, going into college, during that time frame. Like that for me was my golden age of gaming. No pun intended. Um, that
I didn't think about
no,
that.
that I did not intend that pun. Forgive me. But yeah,
Cool.
as I've talked about on the show, I had played games somewhat off and on before getting to high school and meeting you guys, but I didn't become like a quote unquote gamer who was like into like the differences between Nintendo and PlayStation and like all the different like new games, like expecting new games to come out or anything like that. Uh, and not until I met you guys. So I kind of was slowly integrated and became more and more interested in that realm, in that industry, as time went on from there. And then, like, I picked up the GameCube, started investing more in unique games on the PS2. Let me see, college. That was when I had my Xbox 360, and I remember playing a ton of games. Like I had so much free time when I was in college. Like there were the times when I would be in class and I'd have to like do work here and there. But most of my time, like I didn't really meet a lot of people. I wasn't really connected to a lot of the people that I met when I was up in college. It was mostly a very, frankly, a very lonesome experience up there. So a lot of my free time was dedicated towards video games, specifically Fallout 3. I remember, I must have put at least 100 hours into Fallout 3, just traveling across the map and exploring all sorts of different areas. Like I covered so much ground in that game and discovered so much, and I probably didn't even scratch the surface of everything there is to find and discover in that game.
That's so funny that you mentioned that because I was just going to mention to Nick that I remember whatever period of time that was when you had first gotten the 360 and you were playing like Fallout 3 and I think probably the first Mass Effect or something, like whatever like year that was. I remember just you were playing all the time.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I was on Fallout 3 so much during that time. That was also when I had the Orange Box from Valve, which had Half-Life 2 and Portal 2, and not Portal 2. It had the original Portal, and I played the hell out of those games. And yeah, that's where I beat Half-Life 2 for the first time. And I remember I was just amazed at that game. Like I was just blown away by like the physics and how good it felt running around. I had never been really big into first-person shooters up to that point, but Half-Life 2 just kind of like opened my eyes, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is just incredible." Yeah, I mean, since then, again, I've had my jobs, I've had graduate school that I got through a couple of years ago. I mean, hopefully, I hit a point where things relax a little bit for me, and I can have more free time towards playing games. But yeah, that window right there when I could come back from class, walk back from campus, I would like play something on my DS, or then I would get home, I would get back to my dorm and I hop on the 360 and just roll around the Capital Wasteland for a little bit, hearing some of Three Dogs' smooth tunes that he played over the radio.
Three Dogs.
Oh man, just so many good times, good memories. But yeah, that was I gotta say that was the time in my life where the gaming was good.
Very cool. Nick, do you remember? I remember there was one summer, like in between like grade school or high school or whatever. I don't remember when it was, but you had I still don't know how you did this, but you moved that giant old CRT TV that we had that was downstairs into your room upstairs, and I remember you were playing Harvest Moon on the GameCube. The what's that one called? The Story of Sea.
Magical Melody.
Magical Melody, yeah. You were playing the crap out of that one, and then you were also playing
Dark Souls. All right, Dark Cloud, right?
I had the PS2.
Yeah.
From Butch that I was borrowing, and you ordered a whole bunch of PS1 RPG games that you never got a chance to play, and you were like playing a bunch of those.
Oh yeah, that was awesome. Man, there's so many of the games of that era that I missed out on. Dark Cloud was one of them, which was like fantastic. I really enjoyed playing that. There was another one. Oh my god, I'm never gonna remember the name of this game. Valiant.
I know what you're talking about. God, Zul wouldn't know.
Yeah.
Right.
It had that like really interesting music to it, and man, I actually like was thinking about that game recently and how much I want to go back to it. But yeah, man, that was a good summer. Another one too that comes to mind was recently. Harvest Moon is like a very summer game for me, and like it's man, I I just laugh at all these like younger kids that like rave about Stardew Valley, and they like rave about how it's the greatest game of all time, blah blah blah, and like my heart goes out to them because it's a great game. I love it, but like I had those same feelings about Harvest Moon, and like there was a one summer where I would just like hang out in like the family room downstairs and just be playing Animal Parade for Wii U, and or for the Wii, I'm sorry. And like just my evenings were just like spent like just farming mindlessly, and it was just so relaxing. And man, like, and then like you get so invested in it that even like when you turn the game off, like you're like looking up like guides on like how to like maximize your profit for green tea and like all this other like
right.
crazy stuff, and like it just absorbs you, and like you're so like into it. And that's a great feeling, but at the same time, like nowadays that feeling is always, there's a little bit of guilt in the background, like to be perfectly honest, like, cause you're so into it, but then you're like, man, there's so many other things like I need to be doing right now. And like knowing how to compartmentalize that stuff is like hard, but back in the days when like your responsibilities were less, like it was so much more meaningful to just be like totally absorbed in a game like that. So yeah, I know those times very well.
Yeah. And that's like another discussion I think we could have one day, but I feel like that stuff, because I'm the same way, I feel the guilt too, but your body deserves that enjoyment, that relax, especially for us who literally were raised by video games, like to shelter it out, like it just seems wrong, like we should have a day where we just sit on our asses and eat Cheetos and play like games like the whole day, like right. I don't really see anything wrong with that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair.
I remember, speaking of Harvest Moon 64. Do you remember when we first started playing that game?
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh.
Oh man.
That was a while ago.
So friggin' hooked. Yeah. That's a fantastic game.
Yeah. Honorable mention. Time of my gaming life was I would say like around the early to mid 90s. That was back when Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis came out on the PC. And I've talked about my love for this game before in the past, but I remember back then my brother, my older brother and I, we used to play the hell out of this game. And I mean, this was back when LucasArts adventure games were at their absolute peak. And they were also extremely hard. And my brother and I, we were like, God, maybe around 7 or 8 each, like 8 or 9, somewhere around then. And we were both trying to put our heads together and figure out some of the puzzles in this game. And some of them we just could not think of. I remember we were actually stuck for months on this one area where you have to go to like Algeria with your assistant, Sophia Hapgood. And we were just running around the place trying to figure out what to do. There were no hints or any sort of indication what needed to be done. And then finally, I think we called up, like we actually gave up and called the hotline like the hint, like the hint
Classic
hotline on what to do, and they told us, oh, you need to enter Sophia in like this. You need to volunteer her for this knife throwing thing. And here, like, we saw the knife throwing section that was going on. And what would happen is we would talk to Sophia, and our options would be, hey, Sophia, you should be the volunteer for this thing because we need a knife for reasons, like, down the line. And she was like, no, I'm not going to be there so that guy can throw knives at me. You're out of your mind. And that would be the end of it. And we were like, how do we convince her? Like, we tried everything. But it never occurred to us that as soon as she says that, she turns her back to us, and we have to push Sophia. So we have to choose the push option and then Sophia to shove her, and she stumbles out of the crowd, and the knife thrower is like, a volunteer.
That's so cryptic.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, our minds were blown. We were like, oh my God. Like, when we actually finally uncovered that moment, like, we were stuck on that for months trying to figure out, like, you don't understand, months. And when we actually discovered the solution, we were in our glory. We were like, yes, we can finally continue with the game. And
Oh my God.
it was just such an amazing feeling. We got to the end. We, it was just such a great time. Like, as a kid, playing Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis with my brother and trying to figure out everything along the way, probably my favorite gaming memory from when I was a kid.
That's awesome.
yeah, that's the stuff that sticks with you.
Yep, absolutely.
And well, does anybody else have any specific times they wanted to mention?
That's pretty much it for me. I mean, there was one other like small moment I remember, like being in college and just like playing Tales of Symphonia when I was out on GameCube. Like, it was in the middle of the winter, and I would have my window open, and I would be sitting on the corner of my bed right next to the window. I was watching and just playing the game, and like, I don't know why, I just like loved that. And my roommates hated me because I had the window open all the time. But yeah, man, what a great little game. I had this little tiny TV, and I had it like hooked up to this tiny little thing, and
You had like up high on like a high
Yeah,
shelf or something, right?
yep.
Yeah, I remember that.
yeah. But man, I sunk a lot of hours into that game. So
You Tomasellos, enjoy your
Yeah.
cold.
Yes, we do.
Jinx.
Yeah, I remember probably the most recent one, and it was very brief, but the week that Stardew Valley came out and I started playing that, for like the week or two after, I like was just so hooked on that game where like I was putting responsibilities aside. I would start playing and think I was only going to play for about 45 minutes, and then like 3 hours later realize, all right, I got to go to bed. Like, I was just completely captivated and sunk into that game. And it's good to know that I can still feel that way about games, because that was not that long ago at all.
Mm-hmm. No, because I mean, we're all still young. I mean, we've got a lot of we have a lot of gaming that's behind us, but we also have a lot of gaming that's ahead of us. I mean, we've got a lot of amazing games coming out. I mean, not just this year, but next year and the year after that. I mean, we're going to have time to play these games. Maybe not the time that we used to have, but like Nick said earlier in the show, we just make the most of the time that we've got and make sure that the games that we play, they give us the value back that we're putting towards them.
Yeah, absolutely. We're all enthusiasts. We're too into this whole thing to just let it slip away, So maybe we're not going to be playing as much games as we were growing up or when we could, but we're still going to be on top of it. We're going to still play stuff that really interests us, and we're going to follow it because, like I said, we were pretty much raised playing games.
yeah, I mean, it's all about healthy gaming habits, and we'll come back to this over and over and over and over again. But prioritizing things, and understanding that just because it's not productive doesn't mean it's not important. And I gain a lot from my hobbies, and it definitely empowers me to in every aspect of my life. It inspires me to write. It inspires me to, do D&D stuff and play games and, connect with friends. I mean, there is tangible positive things that come from gaming, but, is this part of growing older is you have to know how to balance that in a positive way. And, it certainly can be done. And I think by learning how to do that, you can enjoy your gaming even more. Like I found, like when I find that time that I can do it and I can really sink my teeth into a game and just enjoy it, knowing that those are the times that I've dedicated for that game, like it makes it that much more enjoyable for me. So yeah. I mean, think about it for you guys too. I mean, like in the last year, since this podcast has been on, like how many games have you played? Like it's like only been like a year, right? And just the amount of things that you've done in this 1 year, it's just incredible. If you kept it up at this pace, like, how many games would be left for you to play?
Yeah, that is true. This is absolutely lighting a little bit of a fire under us, and it's just really great to do this and have it all feel so natural.
Yeah, absolutely. I can definitely agree with that. Like since we started the podcast, I've definitely been playing a lot more games, not even just like for the podcast's sake, but for my own sake. And this podcast, since we started it, like has definitely been a great reminder to me of like how much I love video games and playing them and talking about them and just thinking about them. Like it's just such a fun hobby to me, and I'm glad that we can keep it going.
Very well said. Nick, thanks for giving this pod some flavor this week.
Hey, pleasure as always, my friends.
Yep, it's nice to actually enjoy doing the podcast for once.
Yes, you are the paprika to our very dry rice.
Paprika's a good spice. I'm okay with this.
I put paprika on everything. I love it.
Paprika is...
Stay tuned for part 2 of our podcast today, where we talk about 3 hours of cooking tips.
Step 1, paprika.
All right. I think we're all getting a little hungry. You better get out of here.
All right, let's go eat.
That's all for this week. Remember, Press A repeatedly posts new episodes Tuesdays on iTunes, Google Play, Podbean, YouTube, and Spotify. If you like what you hear, please take a moment to rate and review the show or tell your friends about us. It helps other people find the podcast and will really help us grow. And thank you to all who have rated, reviewed, and subscribed so far. We love you.
You can follow us on our Facebook page or on Twitter and Instagram. We are at Press A Repeatedly. I'm at cgold113. Justin is at oaf7724. And Nick is at Genji Glove. Email us any questions or comments at parpodcast@gmail.com. That's parpodcast@gmail.com. That's all for this episode. Chris, Justin, and Nick signing off. And remember to fire your cannon to bounce higher and higher to reach the elusive heart squids. Press A repeatedly.
All right, good work.